Amongst these, it was claimed that his severed head, hidden deep in a forest by the Vikings and guarded by a wolf, instructed the faithful as to its whereabouts so it could be buried on sanctified ground. St. Edmund was the last of the Woofing kings who had ruled the kingdom of East Anglia. Shortly afterwards, in AD 1020, the Danish king Canute, he who is said to have ordered the tide to turn back but failed, in restitution made the saint's burial place an abbey, one at whose high altar 200 years later rebellious barons swore to force King John's acceptance of Magna Carta, yet another turning point in British and world history. Even though few traces of its original Saxon work remain, a ruined Bury St. Edmunds still displays something of the medieval magnificence inspired by the faith of these converted Germanic peoples. Southeast of Bury St. Edmunds and near the town of Woodbridge, Suffolk, lies Sutton Hoo, another Anglo-Saxon site, but here on a grassy terrace overlooking the River Deben's estuary. Now part of a National Trust exhibition complex, this 250-acre, tree-fringed open area was obviously a place of great significance for Anglo-Saxon peoples, its undulations and mounds marking burial sites of their great leaders and chieftains. In 1939, just 3 years after Tolkien's celebrated essay, 2 funeral ships were discovered here, one containing the richest hoard of grave goods ever to be discovered within Britain. This was burial sites of the Woofing kings, close relations of the Yet tribe to which Beowulf belonged, and descending from the Wolfings, sons of the Wolves, who were the Yet's northern neighbours. Ships were an integral part of northern culture. Beowulf's people had once occupied islands or coastal areas whose few pockets of good land had to be defended against enemies. Baltic forests provided materials for vessels essential to the trading, raiding, and piracy that were an essential part of Nordic life. Skilled shipbuilders used the region's fine timber to produce shallow-draft longships that could both survive treacherous open waters and negotiate winding inland rivers.
The evidence suggests that the Anglo-Saxons, when they travelled about, actually used rivers rather than roads. The people who came before them, the Romans, famous for their roads. But everything leads us to believe that the Anglo-Saxons preferred rivers to move around. They had small boats which they could pass up the rivers. We believe that they came to Weststow through a river system. When it came to big expanses of water, like they had to cross the North Sea, a lot of archaeologists believe that what they did was coast-hopped. They stayed close to the coast, moved down to the narrowest point, and then made a dash across that narrow point.
Beowulf's people traditionally honoured heroic dead, either cremating their bodies in blazing funeral pyres or interring them beneath earthen mounds that marked their status. The afterlife was important to those living in a harsh world, and especially significant leaders might be placed in a funeral ship to journey there. Tolkien's celebrated Lord of the Rings has the warrior Boromir been dispatched to the ocean in this manner. "Then let us lay him in a boat with his weapons, and the weapons of his vanquished foes," said Aragorn, "so no evil creature dishonours his bones." Although Anglo-Saxons had been settled in England for some 200 years, during which time many had converted to Christianity, at Sutton Hoo in the early 7th century they followed pagan tradition, although burying 2 funeral ships rather than sending them out to sea. Amongst other items recovered, there was a hoard of superb armour, weaponry, and ornamented grave goods. The vessel itself had all but vanished, but soil impressions revealed it to have been of great size. This was a burial site of the highest status, its accompanying treasure hoard containing a shield emblazoned with eagle and dragon, magnificent sword with a jewelled hilt, together with fighting spears and axe. Perhaps of even greater significance was a coat of the finest ringmail of such worth that its deliberate burial reveals the great honour being bestowed. Mail coats then and later were so difficult to manufacture and thus so precious, they were usually handed on for reuse. The Bayeux Tapestry shows dead being stripped of their mail coats after the Battle of Hastings in AD 1066. This Sutton Hoo burial also contained a superb ceremonial or parade helmet, ornamented with snake-like crest, face mask and cheek guards. There were fine bowls, drinking horns and cups, cauldrons and lamps that would be needed by the hero in his afterlife. Everything discovered here, whether armour or weapons, or the clothes, shoes and belts adorned with superb enamelling and jewellery, revealed this to have been a leader of great wealth and even greater honour. This was probably the grave of Radwold, king of East Anglia, who died early in the 7th century, slightly before the Beowulf epic was written. Religious practices suggested by his burial shed light on the mixture of pagan and Christian elements that Beowulf contains. Burials and grave goods, mead halls and kingly gifts tell that Beowulf's people had organised themselves into close-knit and well-ordered societies in which, although predominantly masculine through love of war, women were able to exercise great influence. At this society's head was a king whose power, although not always hereditary, was exercised through his thanes, a personal band of warriors selected from a noble class of earls. Below these were freemen commoners who provided essential skills and service, all being seasoned fighters. The whole social structure supported by slaves or serfs were also expected to play a part in battle. Loyalty and service was owed to king or queen and one another. Heroic in historian scale, Beowulf emphasises more the masculine and military than everyday domestic aspects of what became an Anglo-Saxon society. Even so, there is clear evidence for much domesticity, since these peoples had come as colonizers, not raiders. Anglo-Saxons seem to have occupied villages much like those of their ancestral lands, ignoring former Romano-British settlements, creating new dwelling places and shunning earlier towns and fortifications. It's been suggested they may have regarded such places with superstitious awe. At West Stow, not far from Sutton Hoo, the discovery of an early Anglo-Saxon settlement dating from between about AD 420 and 650 led to the reconstruction of some of its 70 or so former buildings that, together with visitor centre displays, helped bring this period of migration and settlement to life. What is known as the oldest house was built in 1970.